Okay, it looks like it says we're live here. Again, welcome to It's Getting Better All the Time Mental Health Outreach with your host, Sister Arnetta Legree. You can find out more about us by logging on to our website at igbatt.com or igbattmho.org. Again, this is It's Getting Better All the Time Mental Health Outreach, providing information and support while encouraging hope and faith. You can find out more about us by logging onto our website at igbatt.com. Thank you for joining us today. At those of you who are wondering, again, log on to our website. You can get information about us and kind of what we do, providing information support while encouraging hope and faith. Please go onto our website, take a look at the information, and send us an email. We would definitely appreciate that. Today what I wanted to talk about, there are two words. I entitled this broadcast, Demented and Distressed. I was going to talk about mental health as it relates specifically to men as we're preparing to close out, because we did talk about women in mental health earlier, so I didn't want to leave the men out. But I wanted to talk about those two words, demented and distressed. Today is May the 28th, 2022. And by now, everyone knows what's been happening in the United States over the last few weeks. Most recently, we had a school shooting. In addition to the school shooting, we've got food shortages. We have marches. We have just regular, I don't want to say regular shooting, but just ongoing shooting on a regular basis. Someone is getting shot or killed, either with a gun or without a gun. And we just, a lot of things is going on, especially with COVID. So for a lot of times, it's hard to keep your mental health. It's hard to keep yourself together with so many things going on. Unfortunately, when we have crisis, one crisis many times will trigger a response. It will cause us to kind of think about the crisis that happened before. So a lot of times when you see someone responding to a situation that you might think that's a little extra, or it really wasn't that big a deal to you, know that many times that what they're responding to is not just to what happened at that moment. They're also triggered. That what happened at that moment reminded them of something else that happened in the past. But I wanted to use a word because as I was thinking about the most recent school shooting, where we had so many children were taken, I believe it was 19 now, along with 2 adults. The word, everybody of course is talking about guns, and of course we should take care of that. But a lot of things we're overlooking, I believe as well. In addition to the guns, someone used the word evil, E-V-I-L, and that's definitely a part, because if you believe in good, you have to believe in evil, right? You can't think everything is all good without taking into account that there's evil as well. There are people among us who just don't think the same way that we think. So when we talk about a mental health, I also heard people say, I'm tired of people blaming everything on mental health. It's important to understand that a person, two things can be true at the same time. A person can have a mental illness, be diagnosed with a mental illness, and also they also have a personality as well. So just because a person is diagnosed with a mental illness, for example, doesn't mean that they're nice people, or doesn't mean they're not evil people. They're people just like you're a person, right? We know that mental illnesses, or brain illnesses, just like any other part of the body, the brain can get sick, and when it gets sick or negatively impacted, you're going to start seeing changes in thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. We know that. Right? So we don't want to say, I think there's this tendencies that we're afraid if we admit that a person has a mental illness, that's some kind of, we're saying that they're not responsible for what they're doing. Remember, competency is different from a person having a mental illness. You can be diagnosed with a mental illness and still be deemed competent. So there are two different things there. So again, we don't want to get to the point where, people will say, how you label everything a mental illness. We label it, if that's what it is, we call it what it is. If it's not, it's not. But even if it is a mental illness, and I'm referencing now to the most recent school shooting, the 18-year-old that went into the school and shot those innocent children, even if it is a mental illness, that still doesn't absolve him from what he's doing, because there are a lot of people, many people, the majority of the people who are diagnosed with a brain illness or are diagnosed with mental illness who don't go in shooting up people. There are many people who are victims of bullying. There are a lot of people who have anxiety, challenges in school, etc., who don't do what he did. So again, just you don't want to kind of throw away the baby with the bathwater. You don't want to say, we don't want to say the person has a mental illness, because if we say that, then it's going to make it seem like we say everybody has a mental illness, or we don't want to make the people who have a mental illness feel bad. No, you can call it what it is. Okay, that's what it is. Now, I've read here to say he has no known mental health history, but when you look at the history, the things that you're looking at, you can see there's something definitely was going on with this young man for a period of time. Right? Looking at it, we talked before, the impact of untreated or poorly treated mental illness. We also know. Those of you who follow me and who read, we also know that many times when you're talking about mental illness, a lot of it we'll begin to see it when a person is young. So you start seeing it in high school. You start seeing different behaviors. But because we're used to the behaviors, it doesn't bother us. Because we're used to Johnny. That's just the way Johnny acts. That's just the way Hannah conducts herself. We're used to it. It's not until Hannah or Johnny go away out of the community, away from people who don't know them, that we start seeing the changes. We start seeing, it's called the stress vulnerability model, right? So again, a person has a predisposition or a certain vulnerability for a particular disease, right, disease or illness, and they're fine. As long as they're in an environment that's less stressful, they're in an environment that's conducive to their symptoms. But as soon as they leave that environment, I use the example, as soon as a kid goes away to college or they go away to the military, that's when you start seeing problems, right? You start seeing challenges. They may start having problems. You start acting different, you see anxiety, you start seeing depression, you start seeing things that you didn't see before, and the family members or friends blame the military, or they blame somebody put something in the kid's drink, and many times that's not the case. What it is that kid always had their vulnerability, and as long as he was in an environment where he wasn't stressed out, he was able to manage it. He was in an environment where people knew him, right? But in a new environment, people don't know Johnny. They don't know Johnny acts this way. So again, having to kind of adjust to a new environment can be difficult, and that's when you start seeing the challenges. But again, going back to this young man, as we're looking at dropout, problems at home, his friends say he was becoming more isolated. Who knows? It could have been some type of psychosis. We don't know. I'm not going to speculate. But based on what I've seen or heard, school dropout, problems at home, problems with classmates, isolated, and acting strange and erratic behavior. So definitely something was going on with this guy. Again, that doesn't mean, that he shouldn't be held accountable. That's like saying, when we say a person has a mental illness, it's like you're saying if a person killed someone, and he's also diabetic. Well, no one is saying that, because he's a diabetic, that he gets a pass. No one is saying that at all. What we are saying is that because of, we're just saying that's what he is. He's a person, he's in a wheelchair, okay? It's just a particular characteristic of what he is. We're not saying excusing it. But definitely was something that was going on there with the young man. We'll never know. But what I wanted to talk about, it was something that I heard, because again, people want to know why, and we'll never really know why. Clearly there was something going on with the young man. As I said, even though he doesn't have a history, he's only 18, given that community, he probably would not have a history per se. But when you look at the characteristics, you look at the little bit, just the 4 things that I do know about him, I did read about him, definitely probably was something, sounded like something was going on with him, and something had been going on for a while, okay? We don't know what that thing was. A lot of people were using the term evil, definitely for sure, okay? It's evil. There's something, we cannot deny the fact, the spiritual aspect of what's going on here. You can't. If you believe in good, you have to believe in evil, right? There's something going on spiritually. You take a look at where we're now in May. On one hand, we're passing legislation that will allow us to abort babies almost at the last minute, even at birth, basically. And then, so you have that, and then now we have an attack on the food supply of the children. You can't even get formula. Now we're looking at all of these kids are being killed. So what's going on? Why is this sudden attack against the children of the future? Okay, why now? What exactly is going on? So when you start looking at it from that way, it does make you go, it's real interesting how all of this is kind of coming together at the same time, right? Again, it's real easy to blame guns, and I'm not saying we should not do anything about the gun problem, but I'm just saying even without the guns, there's still evil still exists. Even without the guns, untreated or poorly treated mental illness exists. Even without the guns, poverty still is going to be there. So we have to be willing to, as we are diligent about the guns, as we should be, we also need to be diligent about attacking or addressing the other issues as well. But one of the terms that I thought was so interesting was that the governor used the term, he said demented. He said the guy is just demented. And when you hear that, it's interesting to see how the politics play. I'm a registered independent, so I look at both sides, and I consider myself to be partial. But I think it's just interesting. It's sad the way how the media plays things. But anyway, or spins different things. But he used the word demented. And I said, demented. And I wanted to look that word up. I wanted to look up the word demented. Because we're using the word evil, and I looked at evil, I said, okay, definitely evil, definitely something going on spiritually. It's definitely something going on as far as gun control, right? There's a lot going on. By the time an 18-year-old gets to that point where he goes into a school and commits a crime like that, there was a lot going on. Not just with him, but to society as well, okay? But he used the word demented, and I looked it up. Demented, behaving wildly and irrational on account of anger, distress, or excitement. Okay, so I look at the word, demented. I think we're on to something here. Demented, behavior wildly and irrational on account of either anger, distress, or excitement. Okay? So then I started looking up the word distress. Okay, what does the word distress mean? And I found this wonderful definition, and I got this from online, you can get it. But distress, because we use the word distress a lot, right? Distress, the definition, is an unpleasant emotion, feeling, thought, condition, or behavior. Distress can affect the way you think, feel, and act. And as I looked at the word demented and distress, that really defined mental illness, defined mental illness, mental health, right? So you're talking about, he used the word that this guy's demented. I mean, he's behaving wildly and irrational. So he was definitely irrational, because irrational people don't go in and shoot children. On account of what? Was he angry? We don't know. Maybe he was. We don't know. Was he excited? Okay. Distress. So what is the word distress? Distress is an unpleasant emotion, feeling, thought, condition, or behavior. Distress can affect the way you think, feel, and act. As a result of his demented behavior, i.e. his distress, he went in and killed people, right? As a result of his distress, his negative distress, affected the way he thought, he felt, and he behaved. So when we talk about mental illness or mental health, it's important that we take a look at how we think, feel, and behave, okay? It's important that we kind of take a look at that. Let me say one more word I think I wanted to share with everyone. Because I think it's so important, when we look at, we always want to ask why, but it's really, We'll never know, and there's no reason, there's no why that you can get that would cause a person, that would satisfy, is where I'm going with this. Okay. I wanted to share something here. And when you use the word excitement here, we think of excitement like something exciting, but excitement is anything that arouses an emotion, that arouses a feeling, right? And when a person gets excited, we think of it, something good. Anything that arouses a feeling, anything arouses a behavior, a person is excited. Your child could be excited about, going to the football game because their emotions they're excited. Similarly, a person who is dealing with voices you can start seeing that excitement, right? But it's not a good excitement. It's more of a negative distress type of excitement type thing. So again, when we talk about what happened and what's going on, again, demented. I think the word demented actually does fit. Okay, I think when we look at the full definition of it, you're looking at somebody that was in distress, somebody whose thoughts, feelings, and behavior, they were distressed as a result of their thoughts, feelings, and behavior that drove them to do this. So why am I talking about demented and distressed? Because it's important for us to take a look at what are the things that's causing us to get into a position of being demented, or that's leading to distress. Okay, are we behaving wildly or irrational? Are we irrational? Are we behaving, and wildly means just out of control. What are we, irrational or rational? Okay, what is driving our feelings, our thoughts and behaviors? Is it anger? Is anger driving our thoughts, feelings, and behavior? Is it excitement, or is it some form of distress? Okay, and again, distress, some unpleasant emotion. What is the unpleasant emotion, if we have it, that's driving us to do the things that we do? So we want to think about this, because right now, we are still a few months out, I'm going to say out of the pandemic, but at least we're to the point now where we're able to come outside and we're able to walk around without masks for a certain period of time. So we're feeling a little better. While we may be feeling a little better behaviorally, like we're able to go out to eat, we're able to, see our friends or see our family, the airports. But look what's happening to us. As a result of that, everybody's been closed in. Everybody's now out in the streets. You have people people who have jobs. People who you wouldn't think behave this way are punching each other in the airport. You have people, out and out fights. And we're not talking about just men, we're talking about women too, okay? Men, women, just punching each other, kicking each other, cursing each other out. You having people on the highway driving. If you blow your horn, they're pulling out a gun and threatening you. What is going on? What is going on with our distress? Do we realize how under stress we are? Do we realize our own distress? Are we looking at our own unpleasant emotion, feeling, thought, condition, or behavior? What is the distress that's affecting the way we think, we feel, and behave? Are we able to identify that? Okay, or we don't. Some of us, we can't. We would think we're doing okay, and we're really not doing okay. It's not until something happens that triggers such an abnormal or irrational response based on the situation, the current situation at hand. It's abnormal, it's irrational, but then when you begin to think about it, okay, well, no, it's really not abnormal or irrational, because they're responding to something that happened 5-10 years ago. But are we aware? Are we asking ourselves the question, okay? What would make an 18-year-old guy be so distressed? And again, unpleasant emotion, unpleasant feeling that affects the thoughts, feelings, and behavior that will lead to what happened. Ask yourself, what was it? What was the irrational behavior that you exhibited this week that was fueled by your anger, distress? What was it? What was the unpleasant emotion, feeling, or thought, condition, or behavior that impacted the way you thought, feel, and behaved? What was it about the person blowing the horn that made you want to run their car off the road? What was it about the person parking too close to you that made you want to curse them out? What was it about the you're in the restaurant and the waiter, waitress, whatever, maybe is 5 minutes late with, asking you, do you need anything? What was it about, why was your response so extreme? Why was your response so extreme to things that you can't change, right? I don't know. These are things, because I think we want to take a look at ourselves as well. It's not just, why we could say, well, why did they pick up a gun? Because here's the thing: you can get rid of guns, you can get rid of knives, you can get rid of whatever you want to get rid of. But if we're still not dealing with our distress, our demented behavior, we're going to have people choking each other, choking the life out of each other. What are we doing with our unpleasant emotion, feeling, thought, condition, or behavior? Distress can affect the way you think, feel, or act. And I'm not going to get into it here, but when you look at our history of America, okay, when you think about we talk about collective trauma, far as collective trauma of being slaves, but what about the collective trauma of those who were not slaves, but who were slaveholders or descendants of slaveholders? Where do you think all of those things go? Someone mentioned that America, we have the highest gun violence rate, but look at America. Look at how we were born, so to speak. And look what our foundation was based on. Our foundation was based on war. Our foundation was based on hate. Our foundation was based on slaves. It was based on taking things from people and not giving them they're being fair towards people. So where do you think all those feelings have gone? You think that people have forgot about it? No. Those spirits, those feelings go from generation to generation to generation. So all of that is still here on the earth with us. So I don't care how much we talk about peace. I don't care how much we talk about loving each other, kumbaya, all that wonderful stuff. Until we begin to have some conversations, real conversations about what's really going on, you can take away all the guns that you want. Okay? We really don't like each other. We really have a problem with each other. You can see it, unfortunately, and again, as a registered independent, I can look at this. It's amazing to me, like how many people, Republican and Democrats, don't listen to each other. Instead of listening to understand, people listen to respond. There's always more than one way to solve a problem. There's never one way just to solve a problem, right? Oh, police brutality. Okay, well, yeah, training. But there's a lot more. When each time you look at training, you look at getting the right officers in. You also have to take a look at the area in which they police. You have to take a look at the homelessness situation. You also have to take a look at the jobs. You have to take a look at the families, the children raising children. There's a lot of stuff. So the thing is, we want to look at a little bit of the stuff, not taking the whole thing. If we're going to examine gun violence, as we should, not examine, but really say, hey, we're going to take away the automatic weapons or take away guns. Okay, fine. Then we also need to be prepared to take a look at everything else that's going on. Let's take a look at the mental health of all of us, the emotions of all of us. We need to be able to ask ourselves, why is it that we can't listen to one another? Why can't we sit with differences? Why is it that if you don't agree with me, then you don't like me, or whatever? Why can't we just sit with differences? Why can't people have differences of opinions and be okay with that? What is the distress that we're having? And what is the impact? What is the distress of your impact? What is the impact of your demented behavior, your demented thoughts? Okay, or do you have them? So I don't have any demented thoughts. What is the word demented? Behaving wildly and irrational on account of anger, distress, or excitement. When someone makes a statement that you don't like, right? And you respond, in this really exaggerated way, That's your demented behavior. That's my demented behavior. We're thinking that people are saying things that they didn't say, but we're thinking that because of our own past experiences. And it's not a good, bad, that's just how it happens. That's just how life happens. That's something we just have to be aware of and work through. There's no need to beat yourself up, myself up. We're just being aware of where we are. So our own demented behavior, our own irrational thoughts, behaviors that are being triggered by our own distress, our own internal distress. Those negative thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. What is causing you distress? Why do you think a person is out to get you? Because they're out to get me. Are they really out to get you? Okay, I mean, or they really are. Have you had a conversation with them? What's going on? So again, what is your distress? What is your unpleasant emotion, feeling, thought, condition, or behavior? Distress can affect the way you think, feel, and behave. The unpleasant emotion, feeling, and thought that you're having. What is at the root of it? You know, what we can say, what is the root? Why did the young man just do that? We don't know. I'm going to put my money on an untreated or poorly treated mental illness, which doesn't mean that I'm absolving him of anything that he did, because as I said before, a person can have a personality disorder as well. Right? There are a lot of people who have mental illnesses. And let me just say this, and we talked about this before in one of our classes, that there are several different types of mental illnesses, right? You know, you have depression, you have anxiety, you can have PTSD. You know, there are a lot of different types of schizophrenia, bipolar, and depending on the type, we may be able to find a reason. Now, as we know, there's no one cause. There's no one reason why a person is diagnosed with a mental illness. We do know it's a combination of various factors, and we also know that there are some illnesses where you can kind of point to maybe more of a genetic factor. There are some illnesses where you can point to more of an environmental factor. PTSD, we can maybe point to more of an environmental factor. Okay? When we look at postpartum depression, we can point to more of a biological or genetic component. So it varies with the illness, but we know psychopaths. You know, we talk about psychopaths, but psychopaths, sociopaths, those are diagnosed as mental illnesses as well. There are mental illnesses. But we don't, in our thought process, we see mental illnesses, when you hear the word a person has a mental illness or a mental health problem, we think more of on the line of a person's maybe a weak or, not always a weak, but maybe a nice person. It's easier to believe that maybe somebody like Mother Teresa or somebody that we like or somebody that's kind of nice or, you know, has a mental illness. It's harder for us to believe that maybe somebody like Adolf Hitler had a mental illness, or like you know, somebody we really don't like in the news that the media is teaching us not to like. Donald Trump, you know, I'm just saying, use that as an example. You know, it's harder for us to believe because we're moved by our feelings. We move by our, which is a good thing, not necessarily, you know, data, but we're more moved by our feelings, some of us. So and I talked about Kanye West. It's easier for people, no, there's nothing wrong with him, there's nothing wrong with him, because you don't like him. You don't like his politics, you don't like where he stands, but you don't take the time to really understand bipolar, because if you understood bipolar, you would see, when you look at him, you wouldn't be surprised by his behavior, right? Again, a person can have bipolar and also have a personality as well. We all have personalities. Just because I have I'm diagnosed with bipolar or borderline personality disorder doesn't mean I'm a nice person. It doesn't mean that you're going to like me. I could be a jerk. There are a lot of people who are diagnosed with cancer who you would think, you know, they don't have, they're double amputees, and, you know, they're some of the meanest people. My point being is that people are people. We all have personalities. You can't just assume that a person needs help or that a person is helpless, that they're homeless, that they're in a bad situation, that they're going to be nice people. But unfortunately, that's what we think. We kind of tend to think we have a certain view or a certain way we look at certain people. We just assume that if they're sick, that, oh, well, they're going to take her some soup, and oh, because she's so nice. And then you find out that she's actually pretty mean. Then you're surprised, like, oh my God, how is she mean? because she's a human being, she's a person, and that's her personality. So again, I just wanted to kind of share that piece of it. But again, we have to begin to ask ourselves, what's going on with us? Okay, why am I responding the way I am responding? Am I responding to this situation for what it is in the now, or am I responding to this situation in the past? Does this current situation remind me of something that happened before? Why am I yelling? Why am I screaming? Why I'm yelling and screaming because I want to, and that's fine. But why do you want to? Does this situation really dictate this? Does this situation, you yelling and screaming, is it going to change the outcome of the situation? Okay. But if yelling and screaming, it makes you feel better, and you know it's not going to change the outcome of the situation, okay. Which leads me to my next thing, self-care. It's important for us to take care of ourselves. So what am I talking about? I talked about the word demented, behaving wildly or irrational on account of anger, distress, or excitement. 2, we looked at the word distress, which is unpleasant emotion, feeling, thought, condition, or behavior. Distress can affect the way you think, feel, and act. Number 3, I'm asking you to take a look at your own demented behavior, your own distress, okay, that's leading to your thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, your negative thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, your unhelpful thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. Number 4, I mentioned the fact about the impact of poorly treated mental illness or not treated mental illness. I talked about the 18-year-old who just killed murdered all of those poor babies. And I talked about his history. I also mentioned the fact that he doesn't have, per reports, no known mental health history. But from looking at what we do know, the 4 things that I've mentioned, it's quite possible he did have something going on with him. But even if he did, just because we say that a person had a mental illness, you don't have to feel like, we're trying to minimize what he did. Because there are a lot of people who are diagnosed with mental illnesses who do not go out and shoot up people, just shoot up schools. So having a mental illness doesn't absolve you of that. I also mentioned that a person could be diagnosed with a mental illness and still be found competent. I think that's the thing that gets a lot of people. You think because when you use the word a person has a mental illness, that gives them a pass, and that does not. Okay, so keep that in mind. So now I'm talking about taking care of your mental health. How do we take care of our mental health? Number 1, going back to the word demented and distress, being aware, what is your distress? What are the things that's causing you distress? What are the things, and it's subtle, because sometimes some of us, we think our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors are really accurate. And it's true, it's accurate, because it's how I feel. How I feel is how I feel. But is it really true? For the current situation where we're at the moment. It's true. I feel like, this person doesn't like me, and they're doing this, and they're talking about me and all this type of stuff. But when I go to have a conversation, I realize they wasn't talking about me at all. So again, we have to learn to check things out. We have to learn to, because if not, irrational thoughts that are not true will just run around in our head, especially when you're depressed, right? Because when you're depressed, we get into this negative triad that nobody likes me, everybody's against me, I can't do this, I never will do this, I won't amount to anything. We get into these negative thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. And because we tend to isolate during that period, we don't have anybody that can challenge those negative thoughts and behaviors. So again, part of self-care, number 1, is being aware of what's going on with you, being aware of your distress, being aware of the thoughts those thoughts, feelings, and behaviors that you have. I always say, if it's possible for you to carry a tape recorder around with you, automatic tape recorder, and record your thoughts for 30 days, at the end of 30 days, what type of thoughts will be on your tape recorder? Will there be thoughts that saying, hey, your positive thoughts, hey, you could do it? Will there be thoughts that challenge negative thoughts and feelings and behaviors that you may be having? What type of thoughts? Or would there be thoughts on your tape recorder like, oh, negative thoughts. People don't like me. And when we talk about negative thoughts, thoughts that bring you down, thoughts that are not helpful, thoughts that are not moving you forward towards your goal, right? Some of us, we have to be careful that we don't become stuck in wanting to hold on to our pain. Some of us, we're in a position that we're stuck. We want to hold on to our pain. Anytime someone tries to give us an option, a way out, or bring up something positive, or to challenge the thoughts, we go back and we retreat. No, you just don't understand. You just don't know. And then we start getting into this competition of who has the most trauma. Well, you may have trauma, I have complicated trauma. And this person, well, I have double complicated trauma. And this person, I have double complicated trauma. And we start going back and forth. And we don't need to do that. Your pain is pain. Okay? Your pain is going to be important to you, just like my pain is important to me. We don't have to get into a fight over that. Okay? But we also don't want to get into a point where we just hold on to our pain as a red badge of courage. You have to be careful. Again, we need to be aware of all of that. We have to be aware of, like, have I gotten to the point where I just like being able to say that I've been diagnosed with complicated trauma, because that I like. People say, no, you don't know, da. No, there's some people who like it. And what happens is it's more comfortable. We all have behaviors and things that we deal with that we should change, but it's comfortable. It's comfortable for me to not go to the gym. It's uncomfortable to go to the gym. Say, where are we with that? So we have to kind of keep that in mind, because in order to get well, to get better, I'm going to have to give up the comforts that go along with being the victim, the comforts that go along with being able to hold on to my trauma. Trauma, it was something that was done to you. You don't have to keep it, okay? And again, it's a process. It takes time. Some people longer than others, but we all know it's a process, okay? But again, I don't want to get off into that. My point being is, self-care is important. But before we can do self-care, for really self-care, whether that's an individual, as an organization, or as a country like America, if we really want to make changes, we got to begin to look at the role that we played. We have to begin to look at the role we played. We have to begin to look at our own individual distress. Okay, those thoughts, feelings, or behaviors that are not moving us closer to our goal, and we have to begin to try to do something different. Well, number one, identify them. Then we need to kind of sit with it for a while. Why am I, how did I get here? What's going on with me, right? How are my thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, how are they manifesting my internal distress? Okay? And then we talk about distress, unpleasant emotion, feeling, or thought. Okay? My emotion, oh gosh, I'm going to be late. I'm going to be late. All right? That's an unpleasant feeling, so I don't want to be late. Because I'm late, I want to get fired. So how am I manifesting that thought? I'm driving recklessly. I'm cursing people out. I'm cutting people off at the road, in the middle of the road. Is that helpful or not helpful? I have to ask myself that. Secondly, I need to find somebody I can talk to. And sometimes it's not necessarily talking about your distress. It's just talking to people. A lot of times you think that you have to be around a person, or they don't want to talk to me about what's going on, and maybe they don't, right? They may have their own distress. But being around other people, sometimes doing other things. So maybe joining the club, maybe learning to swim, or learning, taking a hobby. Those things, that sounds corny. I don't want to do all of that. But it's about breaking the routine. It's about changing what's on your tape recorder, those thoughts, feelings, and behaviors that are negative. Doing things that are positive. We all know we should be exercising, unless the doctor says you shouldn't, but we know we need to be exercising. We all know we could probably be eating a little better, unless you're already eating better, eating good now. But again, what are the things that we can do to start taking care of ourselves, right? Sometimes you may have to turn the phone off. Sometimes you can't listen to the news over and over and over again, okay? I don't care what news you listen to. At some point, you're may need to turn the TV off and look, I need to do something else. I need to get out of the house. I need to go for a walk. I may need to turn to another channel. Sometimes just watching the show that makes you laugh, or makes some stupid show that is not even grounded in reality, but it takes you away from what's going on for the moment. You need to do that. That's important. So again, if you feel like you need to cry, of course, cry. If you feel like you need to give voice to what's going on with you, do that. Because that's the best thing to do, really. It's something that's distressing you, is give it a voice to what that is. Okay? This is what's going on with me, this is how I feel, and begin to sit with it, and then begin to work through it, begin to process it. You have to bring it to the surface. Many of us are walking around depressed, sad, and angry because we have things that we have not dealt with, that we have not brought to the surface. Okay? So again, I'm going to stick with the word demented. When you ask the motive for the school shooting, what was going on, I'm going to stick with demented and distress. I like the word evil. I like the importance of getting rid of guns. But the word demented and distress, those two words, really fit. There was a wild behavior, irrational, or an account of anger, distress, or excitement. We don't know which one. We're going to assume it's some form of distress. Unpleasant emotion, because it had to be an unpleasant emotion for you to go out and do what you did. The other gentleman in New York, his emotion was anger, his emotion was hatred. An unpleasant, we know what his was. Okay? Unpleasant emotion, feeling, or thought. When people kill people in the street, in violence, just regular violence, if I can say that, in the street, what was the emotion, feeling, or thought? You disrespected me. Okay? You did something I didn't like. You said something about my family member. When I slapped on national TV, you slapped somebody on national TV, there was some type of unpleasant emotion. There was a distress. It wasn't what the person said. See, a person can say anything. It's not what a person says or what a person does. It's my perception. Okay? What do I perceive? That's the impact. But anyway, this has been It's Getting Better All the Time, mental health outreach, providing information and support. It's important for you to take a look at what is causing you distress, what is leading to maybe some behaviors that you may have that might be considered demented, and again, that will cause you to behave wildly and irrational on account of anger, distress, or excitement. What are the things that's causing you distress? Identify those things, begin to work through them. If you need help working through them, get the help that you need to do that. Log on to our website. We do have some 1-800 numbers, igbatt.com. This is again, It's Getting Better All the Time, mental health outreach. If you want to write us or send a letter, make a donation, you can do so. Post Office Box 7432, Silver Spring, Maryland 20910, or you can log on to our website, send us an email, igbatt1@aol.com. But if you go on our website, igbatt.com, you can get all that information. So again, everyone, please be safe. Pay attention to what's causing you distress, things that could lead to demented behavior on your part, on my part, and let's kind of do something about it. Let's take care of ourselves.